We're coming to the end of 10 whole years of pretty awesome games. Some not so much. But I really wanted to make this video and highlight some of my absolute favorite games from the last decade. This is best racing games of the decade. Some of these are going to be pretty obvious. Some of these are going to be a shock to you, depending if you know me or not. But let me know in the comments throughout the video your own categories. Of course, this is just my personal list, but I would love to hear your own. Best multiplayer, Driver San Francisco. Jumping in with a big one. This is Driver San Francisco, man. I don't even know how I don't even know if I need to explain to you, should I say, why this is one of my absolute favorite multiplayer games. Now, Driver San Francisco used its weird gameplay mechanics, which is zooming out of cars and zooming into cars, and made creative gameplay modes about them. Most racing games have a PvP race mode, and quite frankly, most of them are rubbish. Absolutely rubbish. Still, 10 years on, and we cannot come up with something more creative than just doing race after race after race. Snore, I sleep. Driver San Francisco has still pioneered and had the best different game modes available to it, thanks to its quirky, weird, zooming in and out of cars feature, which I'm going to say they came up with some absolutely creative game modes. There were very different ones as well, and of course there was even normal racing, if that was your thing. They were pretty on top of their game. Honorable mention, Burnout Paradise Remastered. Burnout Paradise Remastered is kind of cheating saying this, so that's why it's just an honorable mention. Burnout Paradise Remastered definitely deserves it though, because it was 2008 the game originally released, and it is still the best co-op racing game experience to date. The challenges gave you a good reward for actually doing them, and in fact this generation I actually managed to get that reward, which is Diamond P12, which last generation I didn't, because I didn't have that many friends. But now I do. Thanks PlayStation and Xbox for having cool social features this time. Honorable mention, Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012. And of course, Most Wanted 2012 is something I keep bringing back, and that is the best competitive experience I've had on a racing game. Granted, this is talking about of my favorites, and the reason I like the speed list in Most Wanted 2012 so much, in fact I hated the game overall in general if you know me, but the multiplayer speed lists are so good, so well structured, in fact that you have to drive to the different events and you can select different cars and all this business. I think it definitely deserves to have the best competitive multiplayer front on it. Most creative, Blur. Blur is a game that I should hate. We've spoken about this before. I genuinely do not understand why I like this game so much. I cannot tell you. I watched the trailer and I got excited. Why? I would never. Can you remember Need for Speed Rivals when they showed weapons and stuff and I was like, man, please, can we stop this and get back to racing? Well, apparently it's a different story with Blur. Why? I guess it's just creative. It's different. They tried something new and it worked really, really well. And I want more of it. And it's a shame that we'll never get to see anything like this again, ever, in my opinion, because it just won't happen. We're not going to get fully licensed vehicles on a game like this ever again, I don't think. And that's why it honestly deserves this award. We're never going to see anything like this again. I'm so sad. Best story, Need for Speed Heat. You saw this one coming. I adored the story Need for Speed Heat. It reminds me back of the Most Wanted 5 days. It didn't try too hard. It was doing cops versus racers. The obvious enemy for street racers, the police. The police are hard in this game. Of course, you can learn to adapt and make them super, super easy. But that's just the way of the world and how it's worked forever in games. But ultimately, the cops versus racer theme and the actual characters I wanted to know about, I love it. I really am into it. Now, of course, I'm not going to say this is the best writing in the world because quite frankly it's not, but what it tried to do is not take itself so seriously. Need for Speed 2015 took itself a little bit too seriously. Need for Speed Payback took it way too seriously. It was refreshing to get Need for Speed Heat. And it was honestly quite difficult to choose between this and The Run, because The Run is just like it's a Michael Bay movie. We already know this. They advertised with Michael Bay on this. So story-wise, which seems to be not really a thing much anymore in racing games, is Need for Speed. Best sound design, DRIVECLUB. Oh, baby, DRIVECLUB. I love me some DRIVECLUB. You know this. DRIVECLUB is my bae. This this game still packs a punch to this day. Now, the studio, if you didn't know, has been closed. They've been moved. They've been closed again by Codemasters. They have been dissipated. They're gone. But this game had so much potential in so many areas. But let's be real. Sound design, you can't beat DRIVECLUB. Now, what I'm going to say is in actual sound, in the car qualities, like how the cars sound and stuff, I'm not going to say it's the best. It's not the best. But what they have done perfectly is if you go around the car and view different camera angles, the sounds are they just speak for themselves. I don't even need to describe this. Let me show you. Best customization. Need for Speed Heat. Once again, a category that speaks for itself. Need for Speed is the king of customization. Has been for decades now. Multiple decades. You see what I'm doing? But this decade, still again, in the lead. I would say a close competitor would be The Crew, but other than that, no one else is doing customization, and Need for Speed is always doing it better. With the addition of engine swaps, that just takes things to another level, and it just completely converts the game to having so much fun with different engines in different cars that shouldn't even fit in those cars. But Need for Speed, in terms of actual making your car your own, it is still the king, and this is a category that I don't think anyone could really dispute, unless, as I say, it's The Crew 2, because they've got some crazy, crazy cars. But for my tastes, it's Need for Speed. Best map, The Crew 2. I would say this is another one that you can't really dispute, but you kind of can. Let's look at it this way. It is the biggest map that we've ever had in a racing game that I can even remember that's actually got decent vegetation in different areas and biomes and everything. It's the whole slimmed down of the US. And of course it takes about 3 hours to get from one side to the other, which is absolutely ridiculous, unheard of before this game, other than games that are just sand. You know what I'm talking about. But not to take it away from that, this decade, to me, it has to be The Crew 2. In fact, it has racetracks around the map, which is just something that all of us want in an open world game, an actual racetrack. In fact, officially licensed, although not perfect, racetracks. Areas where in The Crew 2, obviously compared to even The Crew 1, they have different areas that they have created that don't really exist. Well, they might, but they haven't actually, we haven't seen them. But you can go off and you can explore and you can find people doing things in the open world. This game is revolutionary in so many different ways, and the map is definitely one of them. The whole of the bloody US, that's still amazing today. Most influential, The Crew. Okay, we kind of already spoke about this a little bit, but we're talking about more categories in this one. So we spoke about the map. I don't really need to describe that to you. The Crew set the boundary for big maps. But it also did for multiplayer. Now, think in Forza, it has a new drop-in, drop-out multiplayer. Even in their newly released expansion, their update, the Eliminator mode is thanks to The Crew's idea of drop-in, drop-out multiplayer, which Ivory Tower have been doing a very long time, if you didn't know. In fact, they've been doing it since Test Drive Unlimited. Yes, the same, well, some of the same people. But we're not even talking about any of those, ignoring all of that. Live service updates is thanks to Ivory Tower. They had so many cool live service updates, which we're actually going to talk about a little bit later in this video as well. But they added so many cool things, and they've continued to do so in The Crew 2, and they hopefully plan to keep doing so. Sure, it's slowed down, but they set this up. This was not a thing before The Crew. Think of a game that updated every couple of months before The Crew. I'll wait. Exactly. They started this thing, and then Ubisoft, throughout all their games, then implemented this system. The Crew began live service updates, free content updates, and I will forever be grateful for it, because the whole industry now is chasing that dream. Of course, not everyone is doing it as well as Ivory Tower did. In fact, even in The Crew 2, it's kind of died down a little bit now, but ultimately, they were ahead of time. They seem to be on a track record for doing that. Best graphics, DRIVECLUB. I've said it a million times before, the graphics on this game are tremendous. You cannot beat it. I don't care about what you can say. You can say all you like, okay? But look at this game. How can you not see it's physically... have a PlayStation or not. I know there's going to be some fanboys like, oh, what about this game? Oh, what about this game? I don't like PlayStation. PlayStation, bad. This game is the most beautiful looking racing game. In fact, the most beautiful looking game this generation. Stuff racing games still looks better than anything that releases today. Of course, textures have improved since this game, but this game shows that textures are only part of the story, because oh my god, the vistas in this game and the cars in detail it's absolutely mind-blowing that this game still, to me, looks the most beautiful of any game I've actually played to date. Even on my ridiculously overpowered computer, no game looks better than this. Best expansion, The Crew Wild Run. Expansions are kind of not really a thing anymore, are they? I had a look through all the expansions that are really coming out, and honorable mentions, Lego and the like, but nothing came close to Wild Run. In the fact that Wild Run reminded me so much of the South Side update, which is the South Side, the South Coast update, whatever, for Midnight Club. In that they added a lot of free stuff. They added dynamic weather, a graphics overhaul of the whole world. You don't understand how much effort that would take. Sound overhauls, introducing new specifications for vehicles. They added ridiculous amounts of content with this update for free, and then the paid stuff was fantastic. The Summit was born, which again is now a thing in Forza and in The Crew 2, and Need for Speed, they're probably going to have to follow something similar, right? Surely. Is it just me, or does The Crew add so much stuff into everyone's mind? Everyone's thinking about The Crew. They're like, damn, that game's doing well. It's like politics. They see something like, that party's getting votes, we have to adapt. That's what's happening here. Supply and demand, market dominance. Just you wait. Crew 3, baby. Best car roster, Forza Horizon 4. This one is pretty obvious. There's no disputing it. Obviously, Gran Turismo at the start of the decade was sure had a lot of car lists, but a lot of those cars were copy and paste of PS2 ones, and they didn't really look great, so it's kind of like you can't really compare. Horizon 4, it's the newest version of Forza. It has the most cars. They keep adding cars for free as well, which is really, really great. You can't compare against the car lists. Of course, it obviously has its downsides in the fact that there aren't many customizations and the sounds aren't great, but that's just something that happens when you have so many cars. But if you are someone that genuinely doesn't really care about those things, and you just like to drive the cars that you want you see on the telly, on the Top Gears, on the Grand Tours, then Forza is the one to go for, you know? Best simulation, Gran Turismo Sport. Of course, the age-old argument's going to pop up with this one. Is this actually simulation? No, I don't think it's simulation. It's actually an arcade simulation. Shut up! If I want to play a hardcore focused racing game, it's Gran Turismo. It still is. It always has been. Stuff your Forzas, stuff your Assetto Corsas, all those things. Of course, you can play those, but everyone goes back to Gran Turismo, and there's a reason why. It's accessible, it's polished, it's the perfect simulation experience. If you just have, you bought a PlayStation, you have a wheel, it's just so easy. The online lobbies, of course, honorable mention for the multiplayer, honestly, I should have said this, but in terms of jumping online, in a game like this, there's nothing like this. The open lobbies with, oh, I'm looking for a drift lobby. There's a drift lobby. Enter. I'm drifting with people I've never met before, and I'm making friends. This game, top notch. Can't compare. Racing game of the decade, Need for Speed Heat. You knew it. You knew it. But if anything, this kind of boils down to what this channel was all about. I started this channel as a group of friends channel. And eventually it became a Need for Speed channel. And eventually after, because it was 2012, it became pretty clear to me that Need for Speed was not the Need for Speed I remembered. In fact, Hot Pursuit, a great game, but definitely not a Need for Speed game to what I remember. And there was nothing near that reminded me of those games. Black Box was closed. Like, what the heck? What's going on, man? It was a really rough time at the beginning of this generation for Need for Speed. They didn't know where they were going. Fast forward to now, I'm super impressed. Now, I don't want to sit here and say this is the best game ever, because quite frankly, that's not the truth. In fact, I think there's some games, quite a few games, last generation, last decade, that I would prefer over most of this list. But this is about this decade. And would I be happy now? This is the way I've got to think of it to myself. If I was playing Need for Speed today as a child, growing up, like I was Most Wanted 05, which was my childhood game, would I be as happy and in love with Need for Speed as I was back then, now? And it's a yes. It has the cops. It has the engine swaps, which adds so much to it. All the cars that my JDM icons are pretty much there. The ones I actually care about are there. Of course, the game needs more cars. The game needs this. It needs that. But it has the story. It has the characters, the cop involvement, the scariness, the actual risk reward is back. There's something to lose. They're learning from past games. Finally, after making many a mistake. But this is the beginning of a thing. This is the beginning. I'm thinking of this as Most Wanted 05. And the reason, 2015, that great game, to me, that was Underground. We've just got another Most Wanted. I'm ready for a carbon now, Ghost. Now, don't let me down, because it was super close. It was super close to me between The Crew, the original The Crew, and this game. And it kills me to have to choose between one of my babies. I love both of these games. And even DRIVECLUB, honestly, the vision of DRIVECLUB was... I would love... Imagine if DRIVECLUB was still a thing today, where that would be. Ultimately, Need for Speed is the one I'm going to go for because it hits me at home the most. But there were so many fantastic games this generation. Decade. I keep saying generation. So there we are. That is my list. Let me know what you think of it. Do you agree? Do you disagree in certain areas? I would love to know. But those are my games of the decade, and I'm very excited for the next decade because at the beginning of the decade, especially in the fact that we're stopping on Need for Speed Heat, the next generation, we're going to jump in with some better graphic keys, better soundies, better everything. I'm super excited. I'm pretty sure you are too. This generation is going to be awesome. We're going to start with Forza next year, and hopefully a Gran Turismo, and hopefully something else too. Maybe we'll see an expansion for the Crew 2 or the Crew 3. You never know. You never know. All right. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all of you watching through to the end. Say butties in the comments, if you watch all the way through. All right. I'm off. I'll see you in a bit. Until next time, smash the like, subscribe if you're new. Peace.